so if everybody wants to make sure they're looking at the screen, full attention at the screen, for those who want to listen in, I have created 2 circles. I'm just gonna, before I delete them, you can see that they're selected because they're highlighted in orange. And up in my object info palette, it says I have 2 circles. I'm just gonna delete those. Oh, I need to be in my Vectorworks. Delete those. And now it says I have no selection, which in this case I want, because I'm just going to draw some lines. So this little arrow is our selection tool. And if I hover over that, I can see that it is an X. So by pressing the X, that's my shortcut key, I can use that to select objects. And that's kind of the default tool that it goes to. You can see that the handout that I've given you has a lot of lines. All those pieces and all that entire drawing is made out of lines. So it's the very basic first and foremost tool that we're going to learn and use. So the line tool is just 2 under the selection tool, and if I hover over, I can see that it's highlighted with, or in brackets, the number 2. So I can hit 2, or I can click on the icon. You are going to want to start practicing using your shortcut tools or your shortcut keys. I am going to mention them, I'm going to repeat them, I'm going to call them out when I use them, because you do want to, that creates way more proficiency in your drawing skills. It's way easier to use one hand to kind of select your shortcut keys and use the other to draw with the mouse. So in selecting the line tool, I can see that my mode menus change on top of my drawing pane here. So, and the default settings for the line tool are as you most likely want them. So if I just, and because we have deselected our click and drag drawing in our Vectorworks preferences, if I just click and then I don't have to hold down my cursor, but if I just move my cursor over to where I want it, and say I want to place this line in this orientation, I second click my mouse and I have a line created. I can see over in my object info palette, it says, and it's highlighted, it's orange, it's highlighted. If I deselect it, it's nothing's up in my object info palette. The line that I've created is there, but it's not highlighted. I can select this object, and in my object info palette, it says that I have a line. We won't worry about class and plane right now, but I can see that there's these 2 little icons. So remember that Cartesian grid I was talking about? That is this little icon right here. And over in these boxes, I have a delta X, or a change in X, and a delta Y, a change in Y, and an X and a Y value. I can also see that there's a little line drawn here with 3 reference points. Right now, the black one, the left one, is my point of reference. I can change that and make this the middle point being my reference point, and you can see when I did that, it changed the X and Y values of that point. And then my 3rd point of reference, again, I press that and it changes those values. So here, that left, is like that grid that I drew. This is my first reference point, and in this case, there's 3. Okay, so this is going to have an X and a Y value, this is going to have an X and a Y value, and this is going to have an X and a Y value. So this point, my left point, I can see if I go up onto my rulers, it's approximately 1 foot and just over an inch about. And if I look in my object info palette, that reference point is that just under a foot, because I'm left of my origin point. It's actually 11.813 inches. So that's where it hits up here. And then this is a positive Y because I'm just above my 0 here. Now if I click my right reference point, so this is positive 10 inches approximately, and I'm up positive 8 inches. Okay, so remember how I was saying it's all based on this Cartesian grid. So when we're using our object info palette to understand where things are located or make modifications, because we can do so in our object info palette to this lines that we've created. So for instance, right now this line is at an angle, and I can change my, if I want my delta Y, I want this to be 0. Now I made one little change into my object info palette. I changed my delta Y, so that's that change in Y. So that's from going from this Y value to that Y value. I put it as a 0, and now I have a straight horizontal line. Okay, so that's one way of changing our values. I mean, most often if we want specific values, say if I wanted now my line is horizontal, and I can see that my change in X is 1 foot 9.38 inches. It's not a very clean number. Say I want to make it a nice round 2 feet. I could stretch this line if I wanted to, but see, again, it's not a very neat number. That change in X, because it's a horizontal line, is the length of the line. So I can just type in 2 feet, and now I have a line that's 2 feet in length, and it's a horizontal line. Okay, so this is making modifications in our object info palette. You can make modifications to objects while you're creating them, and you can also make modifications to objects after you've created them. So I can use my line tool, and I can see that when I'm creating my line tool, there's this little data field box that comes up, and there's an L and an A in it. So that is for length and angle. So I can press Tab, and that takes me into my data field, and I can specify that I actually want this to be 2 feet. And I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to do it at that set angle. So that is a way of modifying our objects while we're creating them. So I can tab into my data field, and I can specify the length. When I was talking about Cartesian coordinates, that's using X and Y values for our lines. There's also something called a polar grid.